Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced by North Idaho College located on Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guests.
We are most pleased to invite two faculty members to our program today, one from the University of Idaho and one from Lewis Clark State College. They're here to field questions on a very important report that's titled Report on Non-Competitive Faculty Salaries at the Colleges and Universities in the state of Idaho. It's a very thorough report, and they recently met with Governor Kempthorne of our state to discuss this very significant issue. And we're bringing you this program as the legislature's in session and is considering budgets for higher education as well as budgets for other programs in our state. I first welcome to the program Dr. Kerry McKeever. She is the chair of the University of Idaho Faculty Council. And Dr. McKeever, welcome. I know you're an integral part of this report, and we appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
And I'm equally pleased to have on the program Dr. Jean T. Straughan, who is the president of the Faculty Senate at Lewis Clark State College, who too has been deeply involved in this report. And I welcome our regular panelist, Janelle Burke, who's an attorney in the state of Idaho, and next to her is Steve Schenck, who is the vice president of college relations and development at Idaho College. And we're going to move to questions immediately so we can get in as much of the data as we can in the time we have. And Janelle will commence today's questioning.
Both of you are members of the Idaho Council of Higher Education Faculty, and so then you have also written a report. Dr. Straughan, you are the person who has been involved in writing the report. Can you tell us a little bit about what precipitated the report and what is in the report?
Well, absolutely. The leaders from Idaho State University, Boise State University, Lewis Clark State College, and the University of Idaho, we got together as members of our faculty senate and really agreed that salaries for faculty, and I must say staff as well, were going to be a key concern. And from Boise State University, you've got Alex Feldman. From Idaho State University, you have got Dr. Randy Earls and, of course, Kerry McKeever. And we came together essentially and decided that we would take a look at the issue of salaries and see if it was the problem that many of us thought that it was. And so we gathered data in a reasonable and reliable manner, and then compared that data to other institutions that kind of fit what our institutions are like and who we compete with for faculty and staff.
So that's how you came about the report. And Dr. McKeever, what was the purpose of this report?
Well, I think the primary purpose of the report is to gather information from a number of different perspectives to indicate to the citizens of Idaho from all constituencies why education is important in the state and why faculty salaries impact everything that's done in the state, how it impacts farmers, how it impacts people in mining industry, technological industries, in order to hopefully promote the notion that we need to be thinking not only about what's going on right now with faculty and staff salaries, but also what will happen 5 years down the road. We're hoping to persuade individuals to be thinking about those issues so that when baby boomers retire in about 5 or 6 years, we won't have a crisis on our hands.
Steve Schenck.
I thought I might just jump in and address a question head on, because we're going to spend a lot of time later in the show dealing with your report. Some people are going to be skeptical. Defend your methodology and your research a little bit. Are you inviting people to take a look at your conclusions and you just stand behind these figures?
Oh, well, absolutely. I think we did a couple of very important things. We compared our institutions to a phrase that I use called similarly situated institutions. So in other words, we took our institutions and first compared them only to other public institutions of higher education.
Good.
We also compared our institutions in large part to who we compete against, who are like us. So like Lewis Clark State College grants baccalaureate degrees. And we only compared the salaries of other faculty members who work at other similarly situated schools, public institutions that grant baccalaureate degrees. For ISU and BSU, since they grant what they call a comprehensive sort of degrees, doctorate, master's, and baccalaureate, we only compared them to those kind of schools. And the University of Idaho, which is labeled a doctoral institution, then what we did was compare nationwide and regionally the University of Idaho to the salaries at these other institutions. And we compared them over time, and we compared them currently. And based on that, you get a really good idea of who these institutions compete against to hire faculty and staff. So, you know, we didn't compare against private schools, and we didn't compare Lewis Clark State College against a place like the University of Washington. We use salaries from those schools that are comparable, our peer groups.
And Dr. McKeever, you also feel good about the methodology, the quality of this research study?
Yes, I do. And the second half of the research, of course, involves the part of the report that's the recent faculty turnovers, where they went and where they got paid. We're in the initial phase of that part of the research, and our figures have been taken from human resources records. We've contacted the faculty members who have left. We've verified their salaries. So we're very pleased with what we found out, stunned by it as well.
Thank you.
Dr. Straughan, that was excellent questions. And methodology is really important, and I really congratulate Steve for asking that, so that we know that you've really given serious consideration of your data. We're going to take a look at two charts that you brought with you, and we appreciate that very much. As I read your report, I too was, I guess, stunned to take a look at four-year institutions here and other places. First of all, Jean, if you would please, would you take us through the first chart as our camera zeroes in on that? You compared the salaries nationwide, the mountain states, which made sense, and then Idaho. And you have full professor, associate professor, and assistant professor. Would you take us through that and show us those numbers and the significance in their differences?
Absolutely. If you look at the gray area in the chart, at these three ranks, full professor, associate professor, and assistant professor, that represents Idaho. If you look at the white area, those are the mountain and also the Northwest states. And that excludes California, by the way, who ranks #1 in salaries. But we also compete against, but we didn't put that state in our data. And then the actual darkened area involves nationwide salaries. And again, this is only for public institutions of higher education, and it is nationwide. And what you'll find is a large disparity. If you compare Idaho to nationwide schools, there's about a 24% pay gap. If you compare Idaho to mountain northwestern states, there is about a 17 to 18% pay gap. And at that mountain level, that means there's about an $8,300 pay difference.
I want our camera to come in on it again close. They went off, and I want them to come back in on the numbers and just zero in on that, please. And looking at full professors, for example, you have 74,376 at the national level, or 66,968 in the mountain states, and only 55,340 in Idaho. Or if we go down to assistant professor, when you're starting up the ladder, and that's where you're really recruiting a lot, it's 45,000 on the lower compared with 39,000. So that's very, very significant. Let me ask Dr. McKeever a question on that line too. You and I were talking before the show. Would you explain to the viewers what the cost is for losing that outstanding professor who came and stayed 6 or 7 years and became even a better researcher and a teacher? What does that mean to an institution?
Well, when we were talking before, one of the things I compared it to, and I think one of the best ways to understand it, is that it's like a divorce. It has huge ramifications within an institution, because it's not just the loss of a teaching professor within the classroom, although that's extremely important, but it's the loss of someone who provides mentorship for students during a 4-year or 5-year program. It's the loss of a leader within the university who serves on committees, who helps to steer the university in the right direction. It's the loss of research dollars. It's the loss of grant potential for the university. All of these various parts of the university are affected by the loss of a professor. And when you're losing significant numbers of professors, then of course it's really, really multiplied.
Takes the whole quality of the student body and the education.
It really does, because universities, like families, need consistency and stability.
Because of time, I'm going to rush on. Jean,
sure.
if you will, or Dr. Straughan, if you will remove that chart there, I want you to talk about the second one along with Dr. McKeever. You both have indicated that in addition to the essential training of students that will be medical doctors and dentists and engineers and so forth, it affects the entire state and all aspects. Would you take us through this chart to tell us what you mean by that, the consequences of losing outstanding professors of instruction?
Well, in terms of outstanding education, we've got some different things listed. I mean, traditionally people think of instruction and the outstanding teaching that professors provide. And as professors have been at institutions, I mean, the longer they're there, the more they're going to develop in terms of creating that intellectual climate that allows...
We've just put that up there. I'm really rushing you, but it's a little hard to see on the screen here. But while we have it on the screen, could you take us through those different areas real quickly, please?
Oh, absolutely. The idea is that Idaho's colleges and universities do a lot more than just teach. Certainly one of the things that we want them to do, and parents and people of Idaho expect them to do, is to engage in outstanding education, cutting-edge scholarship, economic development, cultural opportunities, and community service.
And a state can go ahead or get behind, like in recruiting high-tech, or if your young people stay within the state?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that people have to understand is that your college and universities are the educational hubs. They're the economic engines. They are the community servicers, and they are the places where your cultural centers are. They create jobs, they create technology, they provide people in the workforce, they drive economic development. They also do a variety of other things. If you look at our colleges and universities within the state of Idaho, to see their involvement in criminal justice, to see their involvement in trying to reduce recidivism, for example, to see their involvement in producing police officers. Same thing in resource management of our natural resources. The extent to which research and teaching and service goes into all these different areas. Public schools is another one, as well as health and welfare.
Thank you. Janelle Burke.
Some people might say, well, it's less expensive to live in Idaho. Dr. Straughan, would you like to start by addressing that concept that maybe Idaho salaries are lower because it's less expensive to live here?
Yeah, you know, that's kind of a traditional response that people give, and I think that certainly overall within the state, you know, there is a lower cost of living. But if you take a look statistically at the places where these institutions are, the colleges and the universities, where the faculty live and where they work, actually, it's right around the national average, right around the 100 index. And, you know, most of these communities, like Boise, Lewiston, Moscow, places like that, Pocatello, fall right under the national average. And so, actually, the fact that pay is the cost of living is right around the national average exacerbates the low pay issue. And it makes intuitive sense that if my cost of living is right around the national average, that my salary should be right around the national average.
You know, if I can just intercept for the viewer, we should give them those numbers. In Boise, on the index of 100, nationwide it's 103, so it's a little higher.
Right.
Cost of living. And then in Lewiston, it's 97. Moscow's right on at 100, and Twin Falls at 97. So they're all right in there.
Yes, they are.
Sorry, Janelle, go ahead.
Well, my next question is for both of you probably, but we'll start with Dr. McKeever. Do you have an example of a faculty member who has left the University of Idaho to go elsewhere for pay reasons?
We've, in the study that we've done, and right now ours is the most extensive of the universities, we found far too many examples, unfortunately. It's quite tragic, but I'll give you a couple. We have an assistant professor of sociology who was making $39,484 here at the university, who left for Louisiana State University, which is pretty much a lateral move, same rank, who is now making $80,000. We have an associate professor of business who was making a substantial sum at the university, actually, $80,000, who left for Texas A&M, which is also a lateral move, is a full professor and is now making $120,000. I think both of those examples show, again, what one of our deans pointed out, that we are training our faculty to leave. And that's very unfortunate for the state.
Steve Sheen.
I have the pleasant or unpleasant task of doing some salary negotiation at this institution, so I'm a bit familiar with this whole process and its impact. Most people would tell you in the salary business that the whole purpose of a compensation system is to attract and retain qualified people. We've talked a little bit about turnover, although I'm not sure you've mentioned numbers or rates at your institution. I wish you would. But let's also talk, if you would, too, about your ability to attract people to replace those who are leaving. Dr. McKeever, can we start with you?
I think the governor, one of the things that Governor Kempthorne has done, and by the way, our meeting with him was a very positive meeting, is that he has designated funds for the recruitment of professorial of faculty, and that has helped us a great deal in terms of recruitment. But the difficulty, of course, and these are generally professorial stars, the difficulty, as we explained to him during our meeting, is that while those help us to recruit students, they don't necessarily help us to retain students or to retain other faculty members, since most of the students will have very little contact actually with those stars, have most contact with 95% of the faculty who really sustain them. And so like we know that it's less expensive to retain students than it is to recruit them. And pretty much, as you've indicated, it works the same way. We need money on the other end, funds on the other end, support, institutional support for those things, for retention.
And real quickly, at the University of Idaho, is the turnover rate high?
It's high. As I said, we're in the beginning of this report, so I don't want to give inaccurate figures. But as the reports have been coming in, I was quite surprised to find out how many had left. I had no idea. But I think that it's going to be a significant number by the time we finish.
LCSC, Dr. Straughan, your comments?
Well, the report, let me just talk about the report, because it does show that at several of the institutions in the last few years, you're looking at anywhere from 15 to 25% turnover rate. And one of the things is I think it's getting increasingly difficult for us to attract and retain faculty. And a lot of our searches reveal this. We'll conduct a search, literally spend thousands of dollars, bring people in, and then when we offer the job to individuals, they're not willing to accept the pay. And of course, when one looks at it, an 8,000 differential, a 10,000 differential doesn't sound like much. But if you compare, again, the institutions in Idaho to other states regionally, an $8,300 difference a year, even when you take out for taxes and benefits, that translates into about a $219,000 earning capacity over 35 years. All right? If you talk about investing that, even at something like an 8.5% interest rate, that's $1.2 million. And if a person, when they're done with their career, looks back and sees, man, I'm out $1.2 million, it's difficult to attract and retain. And that doesn't even mention the fact of how their retirement funds will be adversely affected by that significantly lower wage. And what I would point out is that's just a regional average figure of $8,000. That's just an average figure. In fact, pay can be much higher than that national average.
Well, and I cannot resist the editorial comment. I hope you'll forgive me that I would insist that the national average is too low. It's not as if that is the place we ought to be. That figure is too low, and we're below that. I'd also have to say that we're seeing the same problem at North Idaho College, and I see the trend accelerating very, very rapidly. Where we used to be able to find people easily, had multiple applicants to choose from. Now we're having great difficulty. It's a relatively recent phenomenon, and it's accelerating.
And it is frightening. It's frightening to think what will happen when, in fact, we have this massive retirement in 5 or 6 years. It could really just, if we haven't done something to address the salary compression by then, it will be next to impossible to get individuals to come.
And you know, this is not, I mean, we talk about this in terms of being pay, but that is not the linchpin here. The linchpin is that it comes down to some simple questions. I am sure that Idahoans want the most outstanding education for their children. I am sure that they want the best situation for economic development, for cultural opportunities, and for community service. And the only way that you get that is to attract the most talented, productive, and experienced educators. And the way you do that is to have salaries that are competitive. And I agree with you. It makes, again, intuitive sense to not focus on the national average if we want to be the best. But we're willing to start there.
Thank you.
I will just echo Steve Schink's comment. We have, and he's very aware of this, we have an opening at North Idaho College, and it's the Vice President of Student Services. And we're in round 3 now, our national search for that person. We've gone through 2 rounds. And again, even those who apply and are interviewed say, is this the salary, and so forth. So we experience that too. I'd like to say to Dr. McKeever, first of all, that another thing in your study is that you use the NEA Almanac of Higher Education. And
Jean used the NEA.
Or Jean was using that. out of 50, here we are setting, according to your report, at number 44. Is that correct?
Yes.
Would you like to comment on that? That ties into what we've already been talking
Sure.
about. But
Again, when you're ranked, 44th in the nation, and what does that mean? Well, our average salary is around $47,000. The average salary nationwide is right around $56,000, about an $8,300 difference, and I already alluded to the fact that that's over a career of 35 years, about $219,000, ends up being $1.2 million. I have to say this, that's no small potatoes. And that puts you in a situation that it's very difficult to be competitive, to get to the outstanding kind of things that, this chart goes through, that currently educators are providing. But it's going to get increasingly difficult.
Dr. McKeever, you were talking about this a little bit early in recruiting and the expenses and all, but with this challenge, another one, Steve Sheik and I were talking about this yesterday. Data tell us that when you talk about retiring in 4 or 5 years, there's going to be a shortage. K through 12 is experiencing this too, but in education in America, the number of people who are choosing to go into the field of teaching, I guess, is declining on a prorated basis. And if there's going to be a shortage, the competition is going to be severe. So the further that you lag behind, is this going to be a double challenge in the future in, say, 5 or 6 years?
Certainly, I don't see how we, on the present course, how we're going to avoid that. And I think one of the things I would also say about that, particularly, it's been a long, as you well know because of your background, I love it whenever we're in election years when I hear politicians talk about supporting education and how unwilling they are ever. They'll talk about reducing class size, but they'll never talk about it. They don't like to commit at all to talking about faculty salaries. And we live in an economic situation, in a culture that indicates to children who are growing up and coming close to making decisions about what they want to do with their careers, that salary does reflect how, in fact, a culture views the position that you go into. And right now, I think, and this is not just Idaho, this is the United States, we are not indicating to our children that becoming a teacher is a worthwhile endeavor.
Let me add a footnote here too. I speak around the country dealing with human rights issues, and I was on a flight to San Diego to speak at a national conference, and I was on the plane with a lady who is an advisor to seniors at colleges in California, and she says she's advising students when they get their baccalaureate degree in computer science, they're starting, many of them, at a salary of $85,000. That would explain why they wouldn't get a PhD and teach at a college. I mean, it's a real, they have to have a certain kinds of commitment to do that. I don't want this program to end, however, with the impression that the faculty within Idaho have not achieved some significant things. So I don't know which two of you want to take this, but in your report it does indicate some wonderful accomplishments at the University of Idaho, Lewis Clark State College, Boise State University, and Idaho State University, our four-year institutions in our state. Would you share with our viewers that there is a commitment and dedication by those who serve in higher education on faculties at those institutions?
You want to go first?
Sure. One of the things I'll tell you is that the track record of faculty members doing really exceptional work in teaching, in community service, in scholarship, is so impressive that I really don't know where to begin. I guess I would feel like if I selected in any one group or slated any person, we would miss out on all kinds of things. So I guess what I would encourage people to do is let us know, and I'll send them a copy of the report. But it truly is amazing in all areas of the college, in our technical side, in our academic side, in our natural sciences, in our humanities, in our social sciences. You'll find very impressive things going on. And of course, it impacts, again, the state in so many different ways. So I guess I would avoid selecting anyone.
I won't avoid it. So I'm not at one of the institutions, those four institutions, so I can do it right. Janelle and Steve, I'm impressed with the list, but I was looking at Idaho State University in particular, and am I not correct that I believe it was in accounting or some particular program that they were achieving #1 in the nation in certain programs?
Yes, actually it's several years going, and it gets to this idea of producing people in the workforce, and not just your average worker, but your exceptional worker. Because out of all the colleges and universities in the nation, the percentage of people who have passed the CPA exam at ISU is higher than any other place, any other institution.
In the nation?
Yes. and we among public schools,
yeah.
and we want, and that's the kind of thing that we want to maintain. That's the kind of achievement and accomplishment. And yet, at that same institution, in just the College of Education, they have 10 positions they haven't been able to fill. We don't want to lose out on that kind of outstanding instruction.
Janelle Berg.
I want to give you an opportunity in the short time that we have left to talk about what you want to do with this report. You've set out some very good long-term and short-term and long-term goals. So let's talk about the short-term and long-term goals.
I think the certainly our plan for this year is to establish a relationship with the Idaho State Legislature. This is the first time that the presidents have worked together from the universities to come up with a report like this, and we'd like to continue that association. We think it's been very, very healthy for the universities, and I think it'll be healthy for other issues as well as we continue it. So we have plans to talk with legislators during the first week of January, during Education Week. We long-term certainly do not plan to retire at the end of this year. We plan to keep this movement going to better our relationships with various constituencies in the state, not just the legislature, but also business, others, in order to really promote education. And I think it's not just, it's education K through 12 as well, because everything that we do to promote what's happening at the universities and colleges will affect that group of individuals as well, both the people who teach, the people who staff the K through 12 system, all of them. So that's I think our long term. You want to add to that?
You have the last word. The clock is caught up with Ms. Dr. McKeever. Dr. Kerry McKeever and Dr. Jean Straughan, we are grateful to you for coming, and we also commend you for this report. I know it's taken many hours, and we want to also recognize that all 4 institutions and the faculty were involved. And I know that you two are speaking for all of those, and good luck to you as you go through a long process of educating to the importance. But you're doing something for the future of students in Idaho and their families and staying in Idaho. Again, thank you very much, and as always, thanks to the panel for their good questions. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us today on this report on non-competitive faculty salaries in the state of Idaho in higher education, and we've addressed the 4 institutions of the University of Idaho, Lewis Clark State College, Boise State University, and Idaho State University. I'd like to invite you to be with us again next week at this same time, and we'll discuss yet another issue. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running entirely college-produced program on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us again at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.